Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 48 Now. I'm digital host AJ Wiest, and survive and advance. That's the nature of March Madness. And today, of course, I am joined with Chris Vannini with The Athletic to talk ahead of the Sweet 16. Chris, thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, good to be here. It's been a fun tournament, especially for the SEC, and I imagine you guys down there in Alabama.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just glued to the TV during the month of March. It's the past 3 days though. I'm like, where's the games? I need to go see the games, but they'll be back in action tomorrow. But first, Chris, just talk a bit about this time of the year in general, just college basketball galore. What do you enjoy the most about the NCAA tournament?
I just like having games on all day for essentially 4 straight days, and now that it's so much easier to watch all the games at once or switch between them, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like the NCAA tournament in American sports where you can have the tiny school that nobody's heard of play the big school like Alabama or whatnot. It's why everybody has fallen in love with the sport for so long. It's why the tournament endures. It's why it's always one of the highest rated things on television every year. And, we didn't get many Cinderella upsets this year, at least none getting into the Sweet 16, but the viewership for the tournament continues to break records. It's been like 4 straight years, I think, or so. They've had record first weekend viewership, and it's not hard to see why. People love it.
That's right. And yeah, you mentioned the upsets there. There were not a ton. There was in the round of 64. We saw Drake beat Missouri. We saw Colorado State win. What's the deal with those 12-5 matchups? It seems like every year there's a 12 seed that reaches the round of 32.
Yeah, 12-5 is always a really popular upset game. It's often because you have a really good mid-major program against an okay power program, and that's what happened with Colorado State. They beat Memphis. I think it was Memphis in the first game. But we did have a lot fewer than normal. This is the first time ever in the history of the tournament that there are no mid-major teams in the Sweet 16. And there weren't that many upsets in the first round either. You had Drake, you had McNeese State, but neither of them made it to another round. There's only 4 conferences represented in the Sweet 16, the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12. The previous low was 7. So is this a sign of things to come? I think it's too early to say. I mean, just a year ago, we had Yale obviously beat Auburn. We had Oakland beat Kentucky. 2 years ago, FAU and San Diego State were in the Final Four. So it's hard to say if this is a trend, if NIL and the portal have really killed off Cinderella. But it is one of the biggest stories coming out of the first weekend that there isn't one of those this year.
Right, and as me personally, a mid-major graduate, it is kind of sad to see because I do like those Cinderella teams making it at least to the Sweet 16 or even the Elite 8. But speaking of Alabama, between the 2 teams here in our state, Auburn and Alabama, of course, who would you say has the easier path to the Final Four?
Well, I'd probably say Auburn just because I picked Duke to win the national championship in my bracket, and I think they are a popular pick from a lot of people. And that's if Alabama beats BYU, that is potentially going to be their matchup in the Elite 8. Auburn is going to play a Michigan team here that has been up and down toward the end of the season. They won the Big Ten tournament, though, and they won their first 2 games, just beat Texas A&M. So they are kind of on a bit of a roll right now. But it's a team that wins a lot of close games. I think something like 11 or 12 of their last 15 wins have all come by 4 points or fewer. They keep pulling a lot of these games out at the end, which is a skill to have, but they're not a great free throw shooting team. They turn the ball over a lot. Auburn is going to be a really difficult matchup for Michigan. So between the 2 teams, between Auburn and Alabama, I think Auburn's probably got a better path right now. And then depending on the Elite 8, do you play Ole Miss? Do you play Michigan State? Either one of those will be tough, but you're always going to have a tough matchup in the Elite 8.
Right, I do agree with that 100%. Just because Duke is just the dominant force that they are this year. But what can you expect? Of course, this is hypothetical. Alabama has to beat BYU. Duke has to beat Arizona. But what can you expect a Duke-Alabama Elite Eight matchup to look like with Mark Sears and Cooper Flagg on the same court to battle it out for the Final Four?
Yeah, I mean, two of the best players in the country, obviously, and Cooper Flagg, who got hurt in the ACC tournament, sprained his ankle, didn't come back in the tournament. He's looked good through the first two games. He seems to be good to go. He's going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft next year. But Alabama's got size. Alabama's got length. Alabama's got really good guard play led by Mark Sears. I expect Alabama to versus BYU in the Sweet 16 to be a very high scoring game, maybe one of the highest of the entire tournament, two of the best offenses in the country. And I could say pretty similar if we got Duke, Alabama. I think those are two teams that are going to put up a lot of points if they were to meet that far again. And, SEC has had some high scoring teams this year, and Alabama's right there.
Absolutely, and we touched on it a bit, but talk about just this Auburn team this year and what they've been able to accomplish, obviously, with Janai Broome, but also the impact of players like Denver Jones, Pettiford, Baker Mazzara. I'd say this team is pretty stacked.
Yeah, I mean, they were the number one team for almost the entire season for a reason. They are just kind of loaded at every spot, and you've got probably the best player in the country in Joni Broome doing that. There was the struggles at the end of the regular season. You lose 3 of your last 4, but those are pretty tough games because the SEC might be the best conference in college basketball that we've ever seen this year. And through 2 games in the tournament, Auburn hasn't had much trouble. They seem to be doing pretty well. This is a team that, you lose the game to Yale last year, and you see a lot of teams when they get upset in the tournament and they bring a lot of people back the next year, they often rebound and go on a big run. Remember, Virginia lost to 16 seed UMBC. They win the national championship the next year. Purdue lost to a 16 seed in Fairleigh Dickinson. They went to the national championship game the next year. So I think everybody in that Auburn program has that taste of last year, and that continues to drive them. I know Bruce Pearl has said he doesn't like being the top seed. He likes the mentality of being an underdog and being a 12 seed. And I think that's what last year kind of does to a team, and you've seen that pretty much throughout the entire season.
Right. There's just something that you just kind of feel comfortable being that first seed. It's like being a lower seed, it's a bit more like you're ready to prove the world that you're here to compete. But what would you say something Bruce Pearl's squad kind of struggles with and could potentially cost them in the title?
Well, I think obviously the defense has been up and down at times. You see, it's had some struggles late in the season, right there with a lot of the points that were being put up. But if this offense works the way it can, I think this is a team that can go very far. I have Auburn in the national championship game. For me, I have them losing to Duke in the national title. But this team really is complete across the board, and it's not hard to see why. You see the win at Alabama late in the season. This team is battle-tested. Nobody has played more Sweet 16 teams than Auburn. They've played a lot of these teams already, whether it's SEC play or even some of the non-conference games. So that experience, I think, is really going to help them here, and the familiarity with the teams they're going to play.
That's right. You mentioned it's a great year for the SEC this year. Do you think the SEC is kind of switching from a football conference to more of a basketball conference?
Well, why not both? It's always going to be a football conference. That is obviously never going to change. But what they've done over the last 10 years as a conference has really been impressive. When they got, I forgot what year it was, but they got 3 bids in the NCAA tournament like not that long ago. And from that point on, Greg Sankey, he really made the conference take basketball more seriously. They brought in better coaches. They brought in better player development and player acquisition. They've added facilities, new stadiums, new arenas, new practice facilities, and that has paid off across the board. 7 teams in the Sweet 16. It's a new record. You've got Ole Miss, who's not there very often. You've got Auburn and Alabama, who have been there recently, but you've got other teams who haven't been. And the top 9 teams in this conference are 15-2 in the tournament right now. And you see all of the depth in this league and the investment that's being made. This conference isn't going anywhere. This is not a one-year wonder. This is one of the best. This is the best conference in college basketball this year. It's probably going to be right there at the top for the years to come because of that investment and what they put into basketball, which just hadn't been there before.
Right, absolutely. And I grew up a Georgia fan, and I even saw the Dogs make the tournament this year, which is something I don't think I've seen since I was 15 years old. So you're spot on that 100%. But what would you say have been some of the biggest surprises in the tournament this year?
I mean, I guess I would say Arkansas. I mean, they're the lowest seeded team remaining. They're only a 10, and they are coached by John Calipari and had maybe the best transfer class in the country. So they're not exactly a Cinderella, but you beat Bill Self in Kansas in the first round. You beat 2 seed St. John's and Rick Pitino, the legend, in the second round. It's been a very impressive run for Arkansas through these 2 games. They're the biggest surprise so far, and it's very funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but you got Calipari on one end of the bracket. You've got Kentucky on the other side of the bracket, both of them in the Sweet 16. And it feels like both sides would love to be the one that goes farther in this year's tournament just so you can say that you won the breakup. Obviously, Calipari leaving Kentucky for Arkansas, big storyline. Not necessarily a bad breakup. I think Kentucky, the fact that they're still good, the fact that Mark Pope has things going well there, Kentucky fans are kind of over it. They don't miss Calipari anymore. But he would love to go an extra round farther than Kentucky, or Kentucky would love to go an extra round farther than him. And so it's kind of a fun off the court. They can't even play each other until the national championship game, which probably not going to happen. But it is a fun little storyline underneath it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to touch a bit on the transfer portal opening during the tournament. What are some of the challenges coaches have to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, for the coaches still in the tournament, it's a lot like football too, where the season's still going on, and you've probably got people reaching out to some of your players or some of your bench players to try to get them to come to you at some point. And so coaches have to deal with that while also focusing on their team and trying to win a national championship. Not only not losing your guys, but guys are in the portal. You need your staff to start reaching out to guys who are in the portal to potentially come next year. So you're kind of doing that recruiting on top of the season. Football you kind of have to do it at that time of year for football because of the academic calendar, because the season goes from the winter into the spring. Guys got to get enrolled by early January to be at their new school. Basketball doesn't have that timeline, so I'm not quite sure why the portal opens at the current time it does. It's usually timed to be a certain number of weeks after the end of the regular season. To kind of make it equal across the board. But I think basketball and some of these other sports could afford to wait a couple of weeks until the tournament's over to kind of make it fair for everybody who's dealing with the playoff, because pro sports never have this. You don't have free agency happening during the playoffs, but you do in college. Football because of the academic calendar, basketball because it's just kind of the way it is. But I think everybody agrees it should change. Tom Izzo at Michigan State had a bit of a rant yesterday when he was asked about the portal, and he says, I'm not cheating my guys on my team. We are focused on what we want to do and win a national championship. And if I think about the portal, if I talk about the portal, that's me not putting effort into my guys, and I'm not going to do that. But that's the difficult situation that everybody's in.
That's right. And I want to touch on the coaching carousel as well, with some big name coaches already on the move. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's what happens this time of year. It's been interesting to see certain moves. I mean, Indiana hires DeVries from West Virginia. He'd only been there for 1 year, and he goes from a power conference to another power conference. I think one of the most interesting ones is Xavier hiring Richard Pitino from New Mexico. So now you have Rick Pitino and his son Richard both in the Big East next year. So the St. John's Xavier games next year are going to be a lot of fun. But this is, it's very frequent at this time of year. You see the mid-majors that make a run. That coach is usually getting hired. And you saw that the Drake coach is gone. North Texas's coach is going to go to West Virginia now. Colorado State's coach went to Minnesota. So it's what happens at this time of year. Guys take those steps up, but because of the portal now, you're going to see a lot of players move as well. New Mexico didn't only lose its coach, 2 of its best players went in the portal. So this is when those mid-major teams really get gutted, both from coaches and players.
Do you see any other potential coaching jobs opening up in the next few weeks?
Most of the big ones have started to fill. The one we're keeping an eye on is Maryland. You've got Kevin Willard there, who seems to be in talks with Villanova, which is still open, and he's been pretty open himself about wanting a bigger basketball budget for Maryland. It's something that Villanova might be able to offer because Villanova doesn't have football. They're able to put more of that money, especially when you can start paying players. They're going to put more of that money into basketball. Is Villanova a better job? You know, they've won some national championships, but in the revenue sharing era, Maryland has a lot more money overall, but a lot of that money is going to football. So what is going to be available for basketball? That's what Willard is curious about. He's still in the tournament, by the way. Maryland's in the Sweet 16, and he's still talking about, like, you know, he knows he might take another job, or at least is in talks for another job. His AD just left and went to SMU. So keep an eye on Maryland, Villanova, and if anything ends up happening there.
Well, that's good to know. Well, Chris, where can viewers, our viewers, find your work online, and where can they check out some of your stuff?
Yeah, just go to theathletic.com. We've got a huge team of college basketball writers who are at every site covering every team. We've had a lot of great stuff this tournament, and we will for the next 2 weekends at theathletic.com.
And then finally, your pick to win it all, or maybe your Final Four picks?
I'm sticking with Duke. That was my pick to win it all. I have Auburn reaching the title game and losing. I also had Houston in the Final Four. My other Final Four pick was St. John's. They have since lost. So I guess I'll go with Florida at that point. So that would be 2 SEC teams in the Final Four, potentially Auburn versus Florida.
And you have Duke winning it all.
I do. I like Cooper Flagg. The team's been rolling for the last several weeks. I really like what they're doing, and I think that ultimately wins out.
Absolutely. They are a force. They are dominant. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining in today. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, for the next 2 days, I'm going to be glued to my TV. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
It's going to be another fun weekend. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.